The council chamber was the largest room Ambassador Choi Yoonji had ever seen. It stretched upward for what seemed like forever, with walls made of a material that shifted colors like oil on water. Around the circular floor stood representatives from 43 different alien species. Some had legs. Some floated. Some existed as clouds of gas trapped in containment suits. But all of them were watching her now. Yoonji stood in the center of the room, her hands clasped behind her back. She wore a simple black uniform with Earth's symbol on the shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled back tight. Her face showed nothing, not fear, not anger, nothing. Above her, on a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself, sat High Executor Vran. He was massive. His body was covered in dark green scales that looked harder than steel. 6 arms sprouted from his torso, each one thick with muscle. His head was reptilian, with eyes that glowed a dull red. When he breathed, a sound like grinding rocks filled the chamber. Captain Han Minho watched from the observation gallery above. He gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. Next to him stood Dr. Park Ji-woo, a thin man with glasses who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. They had both known this day would come. The Drexilians had been circling humanity for months, looking for an excuse. Now they had one. Human. Vran's voice boomed through the chamber. It was amplified somehow, making it feel like the words were coming from all directions at once. You stand accused of crimes against the Galactic Council and the Drexilian Empire. Yoonji said nothing. She simply waited. Vran lifted one of his 6 arms. A holographic display appeared in the air, showing star systems marked in red. Your species has colonized 4 systems without permission. Systems that belong to the Drexilian Empire by ancient right. You have stolen resources. You have refused to pay tribute. You have shown disrespect to your betters. In the gallery, Ji-woo leaned close to Minho. Those systems were empty, he whispered. The Drexilians never even visited them. Doesn't matter, Minho whispered back. They claim everything. Down below, Vran continued. For these crimes, the sentence is clear. Your species will surrender all military vessels immediately. You will place your colonies under Drexilian oversight. You will pay tribute of 30% of all resources produced, and you will submit to our rule. A murmur ran through the council. Some of the aliens looked sympathetic. Most looked relieved that it wasn't their species being threatened this time. The crystalline beings called the Lumera shimmered with what might have been sadness. The aquatic Arasi in their water tanks bubbled nervously, but none of them spoke up. None of them defended humanity, because this was how it always went. The Drexilians were the strongest military power in known space. They had conquered 17 species over the last 1,000 years. When they made demands, species submitted, or they disappeared. You have 10 standard cycles to comply, Vran said, his red eyes fixed on Yoonji like targeting lasers. After that, the Drexilian armada will arrive at your homeworld. We will take what is ours. Your cities will burn. Your people will serve us or die. This is the way of the galaxy. The strong rule, the weak submit. Silence fell over the chamber. Every being in the room waited to hear what the human would say. Some expected begging, others expected tears. A few expected angry words that would change nothing. Yoonji tilted her head slightly. Then she spoke, her voice calm and clear. Is that all? The chamber went silent. It was like someone had sucked all the air out of the room. In the gallery, Minho felt his stomach drop. Ji-woo made a small choking sound. Vran's scales rippled. Colors flashed across them, red and black. What did you say? I asked if that was all, Yoonji repeated. She might have been asking about the weather. Is that your complete list of demands? Your full threat? Because if so, I have an answer. You dare to mock me? Vran rose from his throne. He was even bigger standing up. His 6 arms flexed, each one ending in claws that could tear through steel. I offer you survival. I give you the chance to serve. And you respond with insults? Not an insult, Yoonji said. She took a step forward. Not backward, forward, a question. You threatened to destroy our cities, enslave our people, and take our worlds. I wanted to make sure that was your final offer before I gave you my response. The other council members began backing away. The Lumera dimmed their light. The Arasi sank lower in their tanks. Even the gas beings called the Vethians compressed themselves smaller. They all knew what was coming. Violence in the council chamber was rare, but it happened. And when it did, no one wanted to be close. Vran descended from his throne, each step shaking the floor. He walked until he was standing directly in front of Yunji. He towered over her. She barely came up to the middle of his chest. He could have killed her with a single swipe of his claws. "Speak your response, human," he growled. "Before I lose patience." Yunji looked up at him. Her face was still calm. "We will not submit. We will not surrender. We will not pay tribute or place our people under your rule. If you want our worlds, you will have to come and take them. But I warn you now, so you cannot say you were not told. You will regret making humans your enemy." The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. Some fled for the exits. Others simply stared in shock. Nothing like this had happened in centuries. No species refused the Drexilians. It was suicide. Vran stared down at Yunji for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a terrible sound, like boulders crushing together. "You are either the bravest being I have ever met or the most foolish. I have not decided which yet." "You will," Yunji said softly. "When your ships arrive at Earth, you will know exactly which one I am." Vran's laughter stopped. His eyes narrowed. "Very well. 30 cycles from now, the Drexilian Armada will enter your system. 10,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled. We will blot out your sun with our numbers. Your cities will be dust. Your people will beg for the mercy of slavery. And when you do, I will remember this moment. I will remember your pride. And I will make sure you live long enough to regret it." He turned away from her, addressing the council. "Let this be a lesson to all species. This is what happens to those who defy the natural order. The Drexilians rule because we are strong. Challenge us and you will learn why the galaxy fears our name." With that, he strode from the chamber, his footsteps echoing long after he was gone. The council dissolved into chaos. Ambassadors rushed to speak with each other, their voices overlapping in dozens of languages. In the confusion, no one noticed the human ambassador walking calmly toward the exit. Minho and Jiwoo met her outside the chamber. Minho grabbed her arm. "Do you know what you just did?" he said, his voice urgent. "You just declared war on the most powerful empire in the galaxy." Yunji looked at him. For the first time, she smiled. It was not a nice smile. "No," she said. "They declared war on us. I just made sure they knew what they were getting into." "They have 10,000 warships," Jiwoo said. "We have barely 300. They've been conquering species for a millennium. We've been in space for 20 years. "True," Yunji said. She started walking down the corridor and the two men hurried to keep up. "They have numbers. They have experience. They have a reputation that makes the entire galaxy tremble. But they have one critical weakness." What's that?" Minho asked. Yunji's smile grew wider. "They think we're just another species that will break when they push hard enough. They have no idea what humans are capable of when we're cornered. No idea what we'll do to survive. No idea how we fight when we have nothing left to lose." She stopped and turned to face them both. "We have 30 cycles to prepare. That's not much time, but it will be enough, because while they're flying toward Earth, confident in their victory, we'll be getting ready. And when they arrive expecting to find frightened prey, they'll find something else entirely." "What will they find?" Jiwoo asked quietly. Yunji's eyes gleamed. "They'll find out why humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We've been speaking softly for 20 years, being polite, following the rules. They took that for weakness. Now they'll see the stick. And they'll wish they had left us alone." She turned and continued down the corridor. Behind her, Minho and Jiwoo exchanged glances. They were scared. Anyone with sense would be scared. But they were also excited. Because for the first time since joining the galactic community, humanity was about to show the galaxy who they really were. Not prey. Not servants. Not another conquered species. Something far more dangerous. Humans who had been pushed too far. Captain Han Minho stood in the command center deep beneath Seoul. The room was massive, filled with holographic displays showing star maps, ship positions, and resource counts. Officers moved between stations with quick efficiency. Everyone knew what was at stake. In 30 cycles, the Drexilian Armada would arrive. 30 cycles to prepare for war against an enemy that had never lost. Admiral Kang Dae-hyun stood at the center of the room, studying the displays with calm eyes. He was an older man with gray hair and a face marked by years of military service. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion 10 years ago, when colonists tried to break away from Earth. He had won that war in 6 months without losing a single ship. Now he faced something much bigger. Show me what we have, Daehyun said quietly. A young officer touched a control. The main display changed, showing Earth's military forces. 347 warships, 50 space stations, 20 orbital defense platforms, various support vessels and fighters. It looked impressive until you remembered the enemy was bringing 10,000 ships. Minho felt his heart sink. That's not enough. Not even close. Daehyun turned to look at him. Numbers don't tell the whole story, Captain. The Drexilians think they do, which is their first mistake. How many enemies did we face in the Mars Rebellion? About 500 rebel ships, Minho said. But they were mostly converted freighters and mining vessels. Not military warships. Wrong, Daehyun said. He moved to another display. We faced 500 ships, 3 million colonists who knew the terrain, supply lines stretched across space, and a population that believed they were fighting for freedom. The ships were just part of the problem. We won because we understood what we were really fighting. Not ships, people. He gestured to the star map. The Drexilians see ships and stations. They count hulls and weapons. They think war is about having more guns than the other side. But humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know something they don't. War is about will, about who wants it more, about who's willing to sacrifice everything. The doors opened. Dr. Park Ji-woo entered with 3 others, a woman in an engineer's uniform, a tough-looking man with military bearing, and Ambassador Choi Yoon-ji herself. They gathered around the central display. Everyone here knows the situation, Daehyun began. So I'll be direct. We cannot win a conventional battle. Ship against ship, we lose. But we are not going to fight conventionally. We are going to fight the way humans have always fought when facing impossible odds. We are going to be smart, vicious, and utterly unpredictable. The woman in the engineer's uniform stepped forward. Her name tag read Shin Yuna. I've been working on several projects that might help. The Drexilians use standard shielding, designed to stop energy weapons and standard missiles. Our railguns can punch through those shields like paper. She pulled up a schematic. We've built 30 orbital railgun platforms. Each one can accelerate a tungsten rod to hypersonic speeds. The Drexilians won't be expecting kinetic weapons. Their shields are optimized for lasers and plasma. A solid slug hitting at those speeds will tear through multiple ships. How many shots per platform? Daehyun asked. About 50 each before they need to reload, Yuna said. 1,500 shots total. If we make every shot count, that's 1,500 dead ships. The military man spoke next. His name was Sergeant Lee Hunwoo. He looked like he could break steel with his bare hands. My teams have been training for boarding actions. The Drexilians have never faced that tactic. Their ships are huge, with thousands of crew members. But they're not designed for internal defense. We get inside, we can do massive damage. How do you plan to get inside? Minho asked. You can't just dock with an enemy warship. Hyunwoo grinned. It was not a pleasant grin. We don't dock. We use breaching pods, small, fast, and covered in stealth materials. We shoot them at damaged ships, cut through the hull, and go in fighting. Plant explosives in critical systems, kill key officers, and escape before the ship realizes what hit them. Jiwoo cleared his throat. He looked nervous, but his voice was steady. I've been studying Drexilian biology. They're strong, but they have weaknesses. Their scales are extremely tough, but they're sensitive to certain electromagnetic frequencies. I've developed a weapon that uses focused EM pulses. It won't kill them, but it will cause extreme pain and temporary paralysis. He pulled up an image of a Drexilian nervous system. Their entire command structure is based on physical dominance. The strongest leads. If we can incapacitate their commanders, their forces will fall into confusion. They have no real chain of command beyond obey the strongest. Ambassador Yoon-ji listened to all of this with a slight smile. When they finished, she spoke. The Council species will be watching this battle. They expect us to lose. When we don't, everything changes. The Drexilians have maintained power through fear and reputation. We are going to destroy that reputation, Daehyun nodded. Let's talk strategy. The Drexilians will expect us to defend Earth directly, so we won't. We'll meet them in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. We turn those asteroids into weapons. Yuna's eyes widened. You want to weaponize asteroids? Every asteroid becomes a missile platform, a hiding spot, or a bomb, Daehyun said. We've got 30 cycles. We can move hundreds of asteroids into position, hollow them out, fill them with weapons and ships. When the Drexilians arrive, they'll think they're facing empty space. Then the rocks start shooting. Minho began to see it. Hit-and-run tactics. Use the asteroids for cover. They can't use their numbers effectively in a debris field. Exactly, Daehyun said. We force them to fight our way. Close quarters, unpredictable terrain. No room for massive formations. Every advantage they have becomes useless. Over the next 25 cycles, Earth transformed. Every shipyard worked around the clock. Every factory converted to military production. Civilian ships were retrofitted with weapons. Mining vessels became bomb delivery systems. Cargo haulers became troop transports. In the asteroid belt, thousands of workers in spacesuits moved rocks into position. They drilled deep holes and installed missile tubes. They carved out hiding spots for ships. They rigged entire asteroids to explode on command. The belt became a maze of death waiting to spring closed. Sergeant Hyun-woo trained his boarding teams in mock-ups of Drexilian ships. They practiced breaching hulls, fighting in low gravity, and sabotaging alien technology. They trained until they could do it in their sleep. His soldiers weren't the biggest or the strongest, but they were smart, mean, and motivated. Yuna and her engineers worked miracles. They built weapons the Drexilians had never seen. Drones that could swarm like insects. Missiles that thought for themselves. Mines that looked like space debris until something came too close. Every trick and trap humanity had ever invented in war was used. Jiwoo prepared medical stations and studied every piece of data on Drexilian physiology. He created not just weapons but countermeasures. Antidotes to their poisons. Armor that would resist their claws. Tactics to exploit their weaknesses. He worked with a team of xenobiologists who approached the problem like it was a puzzle to solve. On Mars, civilian resistance fighters trained under Yoon Junho, a former miner who knew every tunnel and canyon on the planet. If the Drexilians tried to land ground forces, they would face not just soldiers, but an entire population ready to fight. Old men and young women alike learned to use weapons. Every colony became a fortress, every settlement a potential trap. Ambassador Yoonji traveled to each colony, each station, each ship. She spoke to the people. She didn't give grand speeches. She just told them the truth. We're facing an enemy that thinks we'll break. That thinks we're weak because we're new to space. They don't understand us. They think war is about ships and weapons. But humans know better. War is about heart. About refusing to quit. About making the enemy pay for every inch. Show them what humans are made of. The people listened, and they prepared. 5 cycles before the deadline, Daehyun called his command staff together. Reports? All platforms are operational, Yuna said. We have defensive positions throughout the belt. 1,400 asteroids armed and ready. Ammunition stockpiles at maximum. Boarding teams are ready, Hyun-woo said. 400 pods, each carrying 10 soldiers. We can deploy 40,000 troops if needed. Medical stations prepared, Jiwoo said. Weapons distributed to all combat units. We're as ready as we can be. Minho added his report. The fleet is positioned. Ships are hiding inside the larger asteroids. When the Drexilians arrive, they'll see empty space until we want them to see us. And morale? Daehyun asked. Hi, everyone answered together. Eunji spoke quietly. A message came from the Lumera. They wanted to know if we've reconsidered, if we want to surrender before it's too late. What did you tell them? Daehyun asked. I told them that we're human. We don't surrender. We make the other side wish they'd never started the fight. Daehyun smiled. It was a cold smile. The Drexilians are coming here expecting to find frightened prey. They think we'll see their numbers and give up. They have no idea what's waiting for them. He looked at each person in the room. We've spent 20 years being polite, following their rules, accepting their condescension, being the new kids who don't know anything. They thought that made us weak. But we were watching, learning, preparing for this exact moment. What happens after we win? Minho asked. If we win, Yoonji corrected gently. We cannot be overconfident. When we win, Daehyun said firmly, the galaxy learns that humans are not prey, not servants, not another conquered species to be pushed around. We become something else, something they'll have to respect. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Hyun-woo spoke. My grandfather fought in World War III. Before he died, he told me something. He said humans are at our best when things are at their worst. When everything's on the line, we find something inside ourselves, something that doesn't quit, doesn't break, doesn't accept defeat. He looked around. The Drexilians are about to learn what that means. 5 cycles later, the sensors lit up. 10,000 ships were entering the Sol system. The Drexilian armada had arrived. Admiral Daehyun sat in his command chair and smiled. Send them a message. The communications officer looked up. What should it say? Daehyun's smile widened. 4 words. Come and get it. War Chieftain Krek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable Death. Around him, 2,000 warships moved in perfect formation. They were the vanguard, sent ahead to crush any resistance before the main fleet arrived. Behind him, another 8,000 ships followed, with High Executive Ran himself commanding. Krex had fought in 37 battles. He had conquered 4 species personally. He had never lost. The idea of losing didn't even exist in his mind. Drexilians were superior. Everyone else was weak. That was simply how the universe worked. Report, he growled. Approaching Mars orbit, his navigation officer said. No enemy contacts detected. The asteroid belt shows normal readings. They're hiding, Krex said. Cowering in their cities, hoping we'll show mercy. He activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships prepare for planetary bombardment. We will make an example of their Mars colony. Let them watch their people die. Then they will surrender. His ships spread out, weapons charging. Mars hung in the view screen, red and silent. The colonies dotted the surface, their lights visible even from orbit. Millions of humans lived there. Millions who would soon be dead. Then the asteroids opened fire. Krex barely had time to register the first impacts. 30 of his ships simply exploded, torn apart by tungsten rods moving faster than his sensors could track. The bridge shook as proximity alarms screamed. On the view screen, he saw asteroids that had seemed dead suddenly come alive with weapons fire. Evasive action, he roared. Return fire! But there was nothing to shoot at. The asteroids were too many, too close. His ships tried to maneuver, but they had been in formation for bombardment, not combat. They crashed into each other, shields overlapping and failing. More tungsten rods punched through hulls. Ships vented atmosphere and died. Commander Bae Sujin sat in the cockpit of her fighter, hidden inside a hollowed asteroid designated Rock 47. Around her, 49 other fighters waited. They had been silent for hours, powered down, invisible. Now her display lit up with targets. All fighters launch, she said into her comm. Hit them fast, hit them hard, then get back to cover. 50 fighters shot out of the asteroid like angry wasps. They were small, fast, and covered in stealth coating. The Drexilian sensors didn't see them until they were already firing. Sujin selected a target, a massive cruiser that was trying to turn around. She launched 4 missiles and banked away hard. The missiles were called Hellstorms. They were simple kinetic weapons, just dense metal accelerated to a fraction of light speed. But simple was effective. All 4 missiles hit the cruiser amidships. The ship broke in half, both pieces tumbling through space trailing debris. That's one, Sujin shouted. Find another target. Her squadron scattered through the battlefield. They didn't fight like Drexilian ships fought, in formation and with honor. They ambushed. They shot from behind. They targeted damaged ships that couldn't defend themselves. Every dirty trick humanity had learned in thousands of years of warfare came into play. On the inevitable Death, Krex tried to make sense of the chaos. Half his fleet was already destroyed or damaged. The humans weren't fighting fair. They hid behind rocks. They struck from unexpected angles. They disappeared before his ships could lock weapons. Get me firing solutions, he roared. I want those asteroids destroyed. Sir, there are thousands of asteroids. We can't target them all. Then target the largest ones. His fleet opened fire, pouring energy beams and missiles into the bigger asteroids. Some exploded spectacularly. Others simply absorbed the damage, their thick rock armor protecting the weapons inside. A few were decoys, empty rocks that the humans had positioned to draw fire. Dr. Nam Jiseok sat in a listening station on one of Jupiter's moons. He had been intercepting Drexilian communications for weeks, learning their language, understanding their protocols. Now he put that knowledge to use. Send the false orders, he said to his team. Make it look like it's coming from Krex's flagship. One of his officers typed rapidly. Across the battlefield, Drexilian ships received orders that seemed to come from their commander. Orders to regroup at coordinates that would put them directly in the line of fire from hidden weapons platforms. Orders to pursue enemy fighters into ambush zones. Orders to break formation and scatter. Some ship captains questioned the commands. Most obeyed without thinking. That was how Drexilian military worked. You obeyed superior officers without question. That rigid discipline, usually their strength, became a weakness. They followed orders right into human traps. Sergeant Lee Hyunwoo felt the breaching pod shudder as it launched. Around him, 9 other soldiers sat strapped in, checking weapons and equipment. They were heading for a damaged Drexilian destroyer that was venting atmosphere. The perfect target. Remember your training, Hyunwoo said. Get in, plant the charges, get out. We've got 10 minutes. Anyone not back by then gets left behind. The pod struck the destroyer's hull with a metallic clang. Cutting lasers activated, burning through the armor. 30 seconds later, they were in. Hyunwoo led the way, his rifle up and ready. The interior of the Drexilian ship was massive. Everything was built to scale for beings twice the size of humans. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. Somewhere in the distance, alarms wailed. Hyunwoo consulted his wrist display, which showed a map of the ship they had built from stolen intelligence. Engineering is this way. Move. They ran through corridors, boots magnetic to keep them from floating in the low gravity. They passed dead Drexilians, killed when the ship's hull was breached. They passed others still alive but injured, who stared at the humans with confusion. The Drexilians had never faced boarding actions before. The idea of enemies inside their ship was foreign to them. Hyunwoo's team reached engineering. 2 Drexilian technicians tried to stop them. Hyunwoo shot them both with the EM weapon Jiwoo had designed. The Drexilians collapsed, their scales sparking with electricity, their limbs twitching uncontrollably. Plant the charges. 3 minutes. His team spread out, attaching explosive packs to critical systems. The reactor, the power distribution nodes, the life support control. Each charge had a timer. Each timer was synchronized. Charges set. Everyone out. They ran back the way they had come. Behind them, confused Drexilian crew members emerged from other sections trying to understand what was happening. They found the charges. Some tried to deactivate them. They were still trying when the explosives detonated. The destroyer died from the inside. Critical systems exploded. The reactor went critical. The ship tore itself apart in a series of secondary explosions. Hyunwoo's pod was already away, racing toward the next target. By the time Krex realized he was beaten, he had lost over half his fleet. 1,000 ships destroyed. Another 500 damaged. The humans had lost maybe 30 ships and taken minor damage to some asteroids. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. Retreat! Krex finally ordered, the word tasting like poison in his mouth. All ships fall back to the outer system. The surviving Drexilian ships turned and ran. The human fighters didn't pursue. They simply watched as the mighty vanguard fled. Sujin brought her fighter back to Rock 47 laughing. Did you see them run? She said over the comm. Did you see it? Stay focused, came Admiral Daehyun's voice. That was just the vanguard. The main fleet is still coming. On the inevitable death, Krex stared at the casualty reports with disbelief. This was impossible. His forces were superior. His weapons were better. His warriors were trained. How had the humans done this? He sent a message back to High Executive Vran. The humans are more dangerous than anticipated. They fight with tactics we have never encountered. Recommend caution. Vran's response was immediate and harsh. You are weak. I am bringing the main fleet personally. Watch and learn how real warriors fight. Krex felt anger surge through him. But beneath the anger was something else. Something he had never felt before in battle. Doubt. The humans had defeated him using tricks and deception. What if they had more tricks ready? What if Vran's 8,000 ships weren't enough? He pushed the thought away. Doubt was weakness. Weakness was death. Vran would arrive with overwhelming force. The humans couldn't possibly have enough tricks to stop them all. But deep down, in a part of himself he didn't want to acknowledge, Krex wondered. He wondered if they had made a terrible mistake challenging these strange beings who fought without honor, but with terrifying effectiveness. On Earth, in the command center, Admiral Daehyun watched the retreating Drexilian ships. Around him, his officers were celebrating. They had won the first engagement. They had bloodied the great Drexilian Empire. But Daehyun didn't celebrate. He studied the displays, thinking. The vanguard had been overconfident. They had flown into the asteroid belt without proper scouting. They had assumed human weakness. The main fleet wouldn't make the same mistake. Captain Minho approached. We did it. We actually beat them. We beat the advance force, Daehyun corrected. Vran is still coming, and he's not stupid. He saw what we did to Krex's fleet. He won't fall for the same tricks. So what do we do? Daehyun smiled slightly. We use different tricks. The asteroid belt worked once. It won't work again, so we let them come to Earth. We let them think they've won. Then we show them what happens when you threaten a human homeworld. Minho felt a chill. What are you planning? Everything, Daehyun said. We're going to use everything we have. Every weapon, every tactic, every advantage. The Drexilians think they've seen human warfare. They haven't, they've seen a preview. Now they're going to see the real thing. He turned to address the command center. Good work, everyone. But don't get comfortable. The main fleet will be here in 6 hours. Get some rest. Eat something. Say goodbye to your families if you need to. Because when Vran arrives, we're going to show him why you don't threaten Earth. The celebration died down. Reality set back in. They had won one battle. The war was just beginning. High Executor Vran sat in his command throne aboard the massive flagship Eternal Conquest. Around him, 8,000 warships prepared for battle. He had watched the recordings from Krex's defeat. He had studied the human tactics. He had learned. They hide in ambush, he said to his assembled commanders. So we will not give them places to hide. We advance in tight formation. We destroy every asteroid, every piece of debris. We give them nowhere to run. The commanders nodded. They understood. Humans were clever, yes, but cleverness meant nothing against raw power. 8,000 ships would overwhelm any defense. When we reach Earth, Vran continued, we will bombardment from maximum range. We will turn their planet into ash before we get close enough for their tricks. They want to fight like cowards. We will kill them like the insects they are. His fleet entered the inner system, weapons charged and ready. They were cautious now, wary, but also angry. The humans had embarrassed them, had made them look weak. That insult would be repaid in blood. Earth hung in space ahead of them, blue and peaceful. Soon it would be burning. Vran opened a communication channel to the planet. Humans. This is High Executor Vran. Your tricks in the asteroid belt were amusing, but now you face the full might of the Drexilian Empire. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick. Resist and I will make them last centuries. Choose. There was a pause. Then a single word came back in Admiral Daehyun's calm voice. No. The Drexilian fleet approached Earth orbit like a storm of metal and fury. 8,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons, moved in perfect formation. High Executive Vran had learned from Krex's defeat. No more rushing in. No more assumptions. This time they would do it properly. Maintain formation, Vran commanded. Begin long-range bombardment. I want every human defense platform destroyed before we close to weapon range. Energy beams lanced out from the fleet, striking Earth's orbital stations. Shields flared and died. Metal twisted and burned. But as each station died, it fired back. Railguns on the planet's surface opened fire, launching their deadly tungsten rods into the Drexilian formation. The shields that had seemed impenetrable against energy weapons proved useless against solid metal moving at hypersonic speeds. Ships exploded. Others took damage, their hulls punctured. Atmosphere venting into space. Vran watched with growing anger. The humans just would not die easily. Destroy those ground installations, he roared. I want every weapon silenced. The fleet shifted focus, bombarding Earth itself. Mountains exploded. Cities shook. But the railgun platforms were deep underground, protected by layers of rock and steel. Some were destroyed. Most kept firing. And with each shot, another Drexilian ship died. Director Ominji sat in a bunker beneath Seoul, watching her screens with satisfaction. Her team had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Now they activated their surprise. Launch the virus, she said quietly. Her technical specialists sent out a data packet disguised as a distress signal from a damaged human ship. Drexilian ships picked it up automatically, their computers analyzing it for intelligence. But hidden in the data was a worm, a piece of code designed to exploit weaknesses in Drexilian computer systems. The virus spread through the fleet like wildfire. It didn't destroy systems. That would be too obvious. Instead, it caused small malfunctions. Navigation errors that threw ships slightly off course. Targeting systems that missed by a few degrees. Communication channels that filled with static at critical moments. Nothing catastrophic. Just enough to create confusion. In space, Drexilian ships began having problems. A cruiser fired on friendly vessels by mistake. 2 destroyers collided because their navigation data disagreed. Fleet coordination deteriorated as orders got garbled or delayed. Vran's perfect formation began to fall apart. What is happening? Vran demanded. Why are my ships not responding properly? Unknown, sir, his technical officer said. Systems are malfunctioning across the fleet. It's like our computers are fighting us. Dr. Park Jiwoo activated the second surprise. The biological weapon they had been saving. Captured Drexilian supply ships, which had been held in quarantine for weeks, were released. They were loaded with food and medical supplies contaminated with a virus engineered specifically for Drexilian biology. The ships were painted with distress signals and allowed to drift into the fleet's path. Drexilian vessels picked them up gratefully, distributing the supplies throughout the fleet. Within hours, Drexilian warriors began feeling the effects. Their scales, normally harder than steel, began to soften and crack. Any touch caused pain. Warriors who could shrug off bullets found themselves crying out when their armor scraped against itself. The virus wasn't lethal, but it was agonizing. And in the close quarters of a warship, it spread fast. Sub-Commander Ryan felt his scales crack as he moved. Every step was torture. Around him, his crew moaned in pain. Half of them could barely stand. The ship's doctor had no idea what was causing it. Medical facilities were overwhelmed. Sir, his communications officer gasped through gritted teeth. We're receiving reports from across the fleet. Every ship is affected. Warriors are unable to fight. Some can't even move without screaming. Ron had served in the Drexilian military for 20 years. He had conquered worlds. He had seen entire species break and submit. But he had never seen anything like this. The humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to make victory impossible for their enemies. He thought about the warnings they had ignored, about the human ambassador's calm confidence, about the way these beings prepared for war. The Drexilians had treated this as just another conquest. The humans treated it as survival. That difference was everything. On Mars, the Drexilians made their second mistake. Vran had sent ground forces to establish a forward base, thinking the colony would be easy prey. 200 dropships descended on the main settlement, carrying 50,000 warriors. They found a city that seemed empty. Buildings stood vacant. Streets were clear. It looked like the population had fled. The Drexilian troops spread out, claiming buildings, setting up command posts. They thought they had won. Then the city came alive. Yoon Junho watched from a tunnel beneath the streets as the Drexilians made themselves comfortable. He was a former miner who knew every underground passage in the colony. Around him, 500 civilians waited, all armed, all ready. They weren't soldiers. They were teachers, factory workers, farmers, children barely old enough to carry a weapon. But they were human, and they were angry. Remember, Junho said quietly, don't try to fight them head-on. We can't win that way. Hit and run, ambush, make them afraid of every corner. Make them regret coming here. His people nodded. They spread out through the tunnels, emerging in basements and sewers throughout the city. The Drexilians didn't even know the tunnels existed. The first attack came at night. A Drexilian patrol of 10 warriors walked down a street. Windows exploded as humans fired from inside buildings. Homemade bombs detonated beneath their feet. The warriors tried to fight back, but their enemies were already gone, vanished back into the tunnels. More attacks followed. Supply depots exploded. Command posts were bombed. Sentries disappeared, found dead in alleys with their throats cut. The Drexilians were strong warriors, but they had never fought an enemy like this. An enemy that was everywhere and nowhere. An enemy that didn't fight fair. The Drexilian commander tried to restore order. He sent patrols into the tunnels. They got lost in the maze, picked off one by one in the darkness. He tried to level buildings where the attacks came from. The humans just used different buildings. He tried to round up civilians. There were no civilians to find. Everyone was a fighter now. After 3 days, the Drexilian ground forces withdrew to their landing zone and stayed there, surrounded by constant attacks. They had come to conquer. Instead, they were trapped. In orbit, High Executor Vran watched his perfect invasion fall apart. His ships were malfunctioning. His warriors were crippled by pain. His ground forces were besieged. And the humans just kept fighting. How, he demanded. How are they doing this? Captain Han Minho, watching from Earth's command center, could have answered him. Humans did this because they had no choice. Because surrender meant slavery or extinction. Because when your back is against the wall, you fight with everything you have. You use every advantage, every trick, every weapon. You don't worry about honor or fairness. You worry about survival. Admiral Daehyun studied the battle reports. The Drexilian fleet was damaged but still dangerous. They still had thousands of ships, but now they were confused, hurt, and demoralized. Time for the final blow. "Launch the drone swarms," he ordered. From hiding places throughout Earth's orbital space, thousands of small drones activated. They were barely larger than a human fist, covered in stealth coating, each one carrying a small explosive charge. Individually, they were harmless. Together, they were devastating. The drones swarmed the Drexilian fleet like insects. Point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. They attached themselves to ships, finding weak points in the armor. Then they detonated. Each explosion was small, but hundreds of small explosions in the right places could cripple a ship. Engines failed. Weapon systems went offline. Life support collapsed. Ships that had seemed invincible became floating wrecks. Engineer Shin Yuna watched her drones do their work with grim satisfaction. She had designed them specifically for this purpose. The Drexilians relied on big weapons and strong shields. They had never imagined that tiny machines could be their downfall. Sergeant Lee Hyunwoo led one final boarding action. His target was a massive battleship that had taken damage but still fought. His team of 50 soldiers breached the hull and fought their way to the bridge. They met heavy resistance. Drexilian warriors, even weakened by the virus, were formidable. But Hyunwoo's team had the EM weapons. Every Drexilian they encountered collapsed in screaming agony as the electromagnetic pulses overloaded their nervous systems. They fought through corridors running with blood, both human and alien. 3 of his soldiers died. 7 more were wounded. But they reached the bridge. The ship's captain, a massive Drexilian with 4 scars across his face, tried to fight even as his scales cracked with pain. Hyunwoo shot him twice with the EM weapon. The captain fell, his body spasming. "Plant the charges," Hyunwoo ordered. 5-minute timer. "Let's go." They ran back to their breaching pod, racing against time. Behind them, the battleship's bridge filled with smoke as the charges began their countdown. They made it to the pod with 30 seconds to spare. The battleship exploded, torn apart by internal detonations. Another Drexilian vessel died, another small victory in a war of 1,000 small victories. Sub-Commander Ron sat on his bridge, watching his fleet die around him. They had started with 8,000 ships. Now less than 3,000 remained combat effective. The humans had barely lost 200 vessels. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. He opened a private channel, one he hoped the humans could intercept, one he hoped High Executor Vran would not hear. "Human Command, this is Sub-Commander Ron of the Drexilian Fleet. We request negotiations. Please stop the killing." In the command center, Admiral Daehyun heard the message. He looked at Ambassador Choi Yoonji, who had been watching the battle in silence. She nodded slowly. "Respond," Daehyun said. "Tell them we will discuss terms, but only if Vran himself agrees to meet. Face to face. On our ship," the message was sent. They waited. Minutes passed. Then Vran's voice came through, filled with rage and something else, something that sounded like fear. "I will come. But know this, humans. Even in defeat, we are dangerous. If you try to humiliate me, I will detonate my flagship's reactor. I will take as many of you with me as I can." Ambassador Yoonji responded personally. "We're not interested in humiliation, Executor. We're interested in peace. Come to our ship. Come alone. Let's end this." Another pause. Then, "I will come." Dr. Park Ji-woo prepared the medical facilities. Even now, even after everything, humans offered their enemy medical treatment. It was who they were. They could be brutal in war, but they didn't glory in suffering. Commander Bae Sujin landed her fighter after 60 hours of continuous combat. She was exhausted. Her squadron had lost 15 pilots, but they had survived. Against impossible odds, they had survived. Throughout Earth and Mars, in orbital stations and underground bunkers, on ships and in tunnels, humans watched as the Drexilian fleet went silent. The bombardment stopped. The attacks ceased. For the first time in days, there was quiet. Captain Minho stood next to Admiral Daehyun, watching the approaching shuttle that carried High Executor Vran. "What if this is a trick?" he asked. "Then we die," Daehyun said simply. "But I don't think it is. I think they finally understand. They picked a fight with the wrong species." The shuttle docked. Vran emerged, and for the first time humans saw their enemy up close. He was massive and terrifying. His scales were cracked and oozing. His eyes burned with hate. But he was here. He was surrendering. "Let's see what he has to say," Yoonji said quietly. Let's see if he's learned his lesson. Vran stood in the docking bay, surrounded by human soldiers who didn't even come up to his chest. He looked at them with something that might have been respect. Or maybe just exhaustion. "I underestimated you," he said finally, his voice like grinding stone. "We all did." "Yes," Ambassador Unji said. "You did? Now let's talk about what happens next." High Executive Vran stood in the conference room aboard the human ship Persistence. It was small compared to Drexilian vessels, almost cramped. But it was functional, clean, efficient, like the humans themselves. Ambassador Choi Yunji sat across from him, flanked by Captain Han Minho and Admiral Kang Dae-hyun. Dr. Park Ji-woo stood nearby with a medical kit, having offered treatment for Vran's cracked scales. The executor had refused. Pride, perhaps, or shame. "Before we begin," Yunji said calmly, "I need to be clear. You came here in peace, so you are safe. But if you reach for a weapon, if you make any threatening move, there are 50 soldiers outside that door who will kill you before you take 2 steps. Understood?" Vran's eyes burned, but he nodded. "Understood." "Good, now let's talk about terms." Vran had expected gloating, expected the humans to crow about their victory. Instead, Yunji spoke matter-of-factly, like she was discussing a business arrangement. It was somehow more humiliating than mockery would have been. "First," she said, "your fleet will withdraw from the Sol system immediately. All ships, all personnel. You will leave our space and not return without explicit permission." Vran wanted to argue. But what could he say? His fleet was broken. Half his ships were destroyed or crippled. The survivors were in no condition to fight. He nodded. "Second," Yunji continued, "you will recognize all human colonies as sovereign territory. No more claims of ancient rights. No more demands for tribute. Our worlds are ours." Again, Vran nodded. Each nod felt like swallowing poison. "Third, you will pay reparations for the damage caused to our stations and colonies during your attack. We'll send you an itemized list. The payment can be made in resources, technology, or currency. Your choice." Vran's claws flexed. Reparations. The conquerors paying the conquered. The strong submitting to the weak. Except the humans had proven they weren't weak. "That was the problem, is that all?" he asked, his voice heavy with irony. The same words Yunji had used in the council chamber. Yunji smiled slightly. "No, one more thing. In exchange for these terms, we will provide you with the cure for the scale virus and repairs for your computer systems. We will also release any prisoners we've taken unharmed. We're not interested in prolonging suffering." Vran stared at her. Why what?" "Why offer mercy? You have us beaten. You could demand our total surrender. You could humiliate us further." "Why don't you?" Yunji leaned back in her chair. "Because we're not like you, Executor. We didn't want this war. You forced it on us. But now that it's over, we're not interested in revenge. We're interested in peace. We've made our point. Humans are not prey. Now let's move forward." Sergeant Lee Hyunwoo stood outside the conference room, his weapon ready. He had fought for days with barely any sleep. His body ached. His mind was exhausted. But he stayed alert. 3 of his soldiers had died in the boarding actions. He owed it to them to stay sharp. Next to him, one of his younger soldiers whispered, "Do you think he'll try something?" "No," Hyunwoo said. "He's beaten. He knows it. The question is whether his pride will let him accept it." Inside the room, Vran was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice quieter. "I must know. How did you defeat us? We are the greatest military power in the galaxy. We have conquered 17 species. We have never lost. How did primitives who have been in space for barely 20 years destroy us?" Admiral Dae-hyun answered, "Because you assumed we would fight like everyone else. You expected fear, submission, traditional tactics. You got none of those things. But your ships, your weapons, are inferior to yours," Dae-hyun agreed. "Ship to ship, weapon to weapon, you're stronger. But war isn't about weapons, Executor. It's about will, about adaptability, about using every advantage you can find. You relied on your reputation and your strength. We relied on our creativity and desperation," Dr. Ji-woo added. "You also made the mistake of thinking we were like the other species you've conquered. But humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. On our own planet, we fought each other with every weapon imaginable. We learned hard lessons. When you threatened us, we applied all that knowledge." "You fought without honor," Vran said bitterly. "We fought to survive," Yunji corrected. Honor is a luxury for those who can afford to lose. We couldn't, so we did what we had to do. Vran looked at each of them. He saw no triumph in their eyes. Just tiredness. They had won, but it had cost them. He could respect that at least. I accept your terms, he said finally, but I must tell you something. I came here expecting to crush you, to make an example. But even now, Emperor Thraxus himself is on his way. He commands the full might of our empire. He will not be as forgiving as I am. Yunji's expression didn't change. Then we'll deal with him too. You don't understand, Vran said urgently. The Emperor commands fleets that make mine look small. He has resources beyond counting. If you anger him, he'll do what? Captain Minho interrupted. Send more ships. We'll destroy them. Send ground troops. We'll bleed them dry. The outcome will be the same. We will not submit. Vran slumped in his chair, a gesture of defeat that humans recognized even in an alien body. You really don't understand what you've done. The galaxy has an order. The strong rule. The weak serve. You've disrupted that order. Good, Yunji said flatly. That order was built on bullying and fear. Time for something better. A signal came through. Vran's subcommander Ron requesting permission to speak. Yunji nodded and Ron's image appeared on the view screen. High Executor, Ron said carefully. Emperor Thraxus has arrived at the edge of the system. He requests permission to approach. Vran closed his eyes. Tell him the humans wish to negotiate. With respect, sir, I already did. He refused. He says he's coming whether we want him to or not. Yunji stood. Then let him come. Admiral, prepare defenses. Let's see if the Emperor is smarter than his executor. Vran looked up at her. You would fight the Emperor himself? If he doesn't give us a choice. She turned to Daehyun. How long until he arrives? Then we have time to finish here. She looked back at Vran. Do we have an agreement, Executor? Or do we need to defeat you twice? We have an agreement, Vran said. He felt ancient, tired. But I warn you, the Emperor will not negotiate. He does not know how. Then he'll learn, Yunji said, just like you did. Emperor Thraxus arrived with a fleet of 20,000 ships. He had called in reinforcements from across the Empire. This human insolence would end. Today, his flagship, the Universal Dominance, was a mobile fortress larger than some moons. It bristled with weapons. Its shields could withstand a supernova, or so the designers claimed. Thraxus had ruled the Drexilian Empire for 40 years. He had never been challenged. Not truly, until now. Humans, he broadcast to Earth. I am Emperor Thraxus. High Executor Vran has told me of his defeat. I do not believe it. But even if true, it changes nothing. You will submit to me, or I will erase every trace of your species from existence. You have 1 hour to decide. The response came not from Ambassador Yunji, but from millions of humans across Earth, Mars, and the orbital stations. A single word spoken in unison broadcast on every channel. No. Thraxus felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Doubt. These beings had destroyed Vran's fleet. They had done the impossible. What if they could do it again? He pushed the doubt away. Vran had been careless, overconfident. Thraxus would not make the same mistakes. He would bombard from extreme range. He would use overwhelming force. He would give them no chance to use their tricks. But then a new message came. This one was different. It showed footage from the battle. Drexilian ships exploding, warriors screaming as the virus ravaged them, ground forces trapped and dying on Mars, and in every scene, humans fighting with a ferocity that was terrifying. The footage was being broadcast across the galaxy. Every species that was part of the Council was seeing it, seeing the mighty Drexilians defeated, seeing humans refuse to submit. Director Ominji had prepared this final weapon, not missiles or ships, but information. The galaxy needed to see what happened when you pushed humans too far. They needed to see that the Drexilian Empire was not invincible. Ambassador Choi Yunji sent one more message to Emperor Thraxus. You can attack if you want. You might even win. But the cost will be everything. We will destroy your fleet. We will kill your warriors. And the entire galaxy will watch it happen. The Drexilian Empire's reputation, built over 1,000 years, will die here. Or you can talk. Your choice. Thraxus watched his tactical displays. 20,000 ships. Surely that was enough. But the humans had defeated 10,000. What if 20,000 wasn't enough either? What if he became the emperor who threw away his entire fleet in a battle he didn't need to fight? He thought about the other species in the council. Species that had submitted because they feared Drexilian power. If humans could resist successfully, others might try. The empire could fracture. Rebellions could spread. But if he negotiated, if he showed weakness, the same thing might happen. He was trapped. The humans had maneuvered him into a position where every choice was bad. Finally, he made his decision. I will speak with your ambassador. Alone. If I do not return safely, my fleet will destroy everything. Agreed, Yunji responded. Come to the persistence. We'll be waiting. Thraxus entered the same conference room where Vran sat, still recovering. The human ambassador stood to greet him. She was tiny. She came up to his mid-torso, but she didn't look afraid. Emperor Thraxus, Yunji said. I'm Ambassador Choi Yunji, please sit. Thraxus sat, his massive frame making the chair creak. I came here expecting to crush you. My executor tells me that would be a mistake. It would, Yunji agreed. Not because we're stronger. We're not. But because we're more desperate. And desperate beings will do anything to survive. Even fight an unwinnable war? Is it unwinnable? Yunji asked. We won against 10,000 ships. Your fleet is larger, yes, but we've had time to prepare more. More weapons. More traps. More tricks. How many ships are you willing to lose to conquer one system? Thraxus had no answer. The human was right. He could probably win. Eventually. But the cost would cripple his empire. Let me offer you something better, Yunji said. Peace, real peace. Not submission. Not tribute. Partnership. We have technology you don't. Medical advances. Computer systems. We're willing to trade. To cooperate. To be friends even. But only as equals. The Drexilian Empire does not have equals, Thraxus said. But his voice lacked conviction. You do now, Yunji said simply. The question is whether you can accept that. They talked for hours. Thraxus argued. Yunji countered. Admiral Daehyun provided military analysis. Dr. Jiwoo offered technical details. Captain Minho shared diplomatic perspectives. Slowly, grudgingly, Thraxus began to see it. The humans were not going to submit ever. He could destroy them, but only by destroying his own empire in the process. Or he could do something no Drexilian emperor had done in 1,000 years. He could compromise. Finally, as the sun set on Earth below them, Thraxus spoke. I accept your terms. The Drexilian Empire will recognize human sovereignty. We will withdraw our claims. We will not demand tribute. And the reparations? Yunji asked. Thraxus grimaced. Those too. But in return I want something. What? I want your military technology. Your computer virus. Your biological weapons. Your tactics. If other species learn you defeated us, they may rebel. I need to be prepared. Yunji considered this. Then she shook her head. No, we're not giving you better tools to oppress others. But we will share defensive technology, shield improvements, medical advances, things that help protect, not conquer. That is not enough. It's what we're offering, Yunji said firmly. Take it or leave it. Thraxus wanted to rage, to threaten. But he was tired. So very tired. I accept. They formalized the agreement over the next 3 days. Ships and lawyers and diplomats worked out the details. Vran's fleet withdrew. Thraxus's fleet withdrew. The war ended not with a bang, but with signatures on documents. 6 months later, the Galactic Council reconvened on Meridian Prime. Ambassador Yunji walked into the chamber, and this time, the other species stood to greet her. The Lumera shimmered in what might be respect. The Arasi bubbled in their tanks. Even the Vethians condensed into tighter forms, a sign of acknowledgement. Council observer Valina, the Lumera who had warned Yunji to submit, approached her. We underestimated your species. I apologize. You didn't just underestimate us, Yunji said quietly. You let the Drexilians bully everyone for centuries. You accepted tyranny because fighting seemed too hard. That's why we didn't ask for help. We knew you wouldn't give it. Valina's light dimmed. You're right. We were cowards. But watching you fight, it inspired us. 3 species have already renegotiated their treaties with the Drexilians. More will follow. You changed everything. Yunji softened slightly. Then maybe something good came out of this. Maybe the galaxy can be better. On Earth, life returned to normal. Slowly. The scars remained. Cities rebuilt. Families mourned. But they had survived. They had won. Engineer Shin Yuna converted her weapons research to peaceful purposes. The same technology that powered railguns now powered deep space engines. The drones that swarmed Drixilian ships now explored distant asteroids for minerals. Sergeant Lee Hyunwoo trained the first joint human-alien special forces unit. Other species wanted to learn human tactics. He taught them, but he also learned from them. Maybe they could all be stronger together. Commander Bae Sujin took command of the exploration fleet. Humanity had defended their home. Now it was time to see what else was out there. Captain Han Minho and Dr. Park Ji-woo worked together on diplomatic missions, visiting other species, sharing knowledge, building bridges. The galaxy was changing, and humans were at the center of that change. Admiral Kang Daehyun remained on Earth, watching the stars, always ready. Peace was good, but humans had learned a hard lesson. Be prepared, stay strong, never give anyone a reason to think you're easy prey. Ambassador Choi Yoon-ji stood in her office looking at Earth below. Ambassador was just a title now. The council had offered her a position on their security board. She had accepted, not because she wanted power, because she wanted to make sure no species ever faced what humanity had faced. No species should have to choose between slavery and extinction. Her door opened. Admiral Daehyun entered. Thought you'd want to see this. He handed her a data pad. It showed news from across the galaxy. The Drixilian Empire was withdrawing from 3 more systems, allowing species more autonomy, reducing tribute demands. The Empire wasn't collapsing, but it was changing. We did that, Yoon-ji said quietly. You did that, Daehyun corrected. When Vran asked if that was all, when he made his threats, you could have submitted. Everyone expected you to, but you said no. You started this, Yoon-ji smiled. I just asked a question. Is that all? Turns out it was all they had. All their threats. All their power. It looked impressive until someone stood up to it. Think it'll last? The peace? For a while, Yoon-ji said. Eventually someone else will challenge us. Someone will think we got lucky, that we can't do it again. And when they do, Yoon-ji's smile widened. We'll ask them the same question. Is that all? And then we'll show them why you don't threaten Earth. Daehyun laughed. I almost feel sorry for them. Almost. Don't, Yoon-ji said. We gave the galaxy a lesson. Humans are not prey. We are not victims. We are not weak. Push us and we push back. Threaten us and we make you regret it. That's the lesson. Let's hope it sticks. They stood together, watching Earth turn below them. The planet that had been threatened with annihilation. The planet that refused to submit. The planet that changed the galaxy. Somewhere out in space, on the edge of known space, human ships explored new systems. They carried weapons, yes, but also scientists, diplomats, teachers, engineers. They were ready for war if necessary, but they hoped for peace, because that was the real human strength. Not weapons or tactics or clever tricks. It was the ability to hope even in darkness, to fight when necessary but dream of something better, to be both warrior and builder, destroyer and creator. The Drixilians had seen only the warrior. They had learned too late about the rest, about human determination, human creativity, human refusal to accept defeat. It was a lesson the galaxy would not forget. The day the mighty Drixilian Empire asked for mercy, the day humans proved that new didn't mean weak, the day everything changed. And it all started with a simple question, a question that sounded dismissive but was really a challenge, a question that meant we're not afraid of you, a question that meant we're ready for whatever you've got. Is that all?